Hey, what's up? It's Emilio DiSpirito, and this is the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you each and every single week. My team and I have hand-selected our guests to come on the program to talk about how to build wealth financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, right? There's so much that goes into building a lifestyle full of wealth, and we hope that this content really reaches you, not only in your brain, but in your heart, and that you could do something with this. So thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we're going to have a great show. Hey, a special thank you to our sponsor, Annie Mac Home Mortgage, whose Cash to Keys product is disrupting the industry. Sick and tired of finding the perfect home, not having your offer selected? I got to tell you, it happens all the time. With Cash to Keys, Annie Mac gives sellers a cash guarantee for each of their buyers' offers. Stop bidding and hoping. Instead, bid with Annie Mac and bid with confidence. Don't just bid, but win. Annie Mac Mortgage. Do you currently own an abundance of multifamily properties? Are you tired of working with property management companies that just continue to drop the ball and disappoint you? Why don't you start your own franchise? Go ahead and contact our friends at Nexus Property Management to see how their proprietary information and systems and marketing can work for you. The success that they have had all over the country is unbelievable. Check them out, Nexus Property Management, and go ahead and let them know you heard it here on The Wealth Architect. Episode number 15 of The Wealth Architect. I'm Emilio DiSpirito, and we have a fantastic topic for you today. Our guest today is a true pioneer in the world of real estate investing, specifically the often overlooked but incredibly powerful asset class of self-storage. Scott Meyers is the founder of multiple companies focused on the acquisition, development, and syndication of self-storage facilities across the nation. With over 4.9 million square feet and 28,000 units under ownership and operation, Scott is not only a high-level investor, he's also an educator and visionary. Scott launched selfstorageinvesting.com, the nation's first dedicated self-storage education platform, helping thousands create wealth and freedom through what he proudly calls a business free from tenants, toilets, and trash. I love that. He's also the creator of the self-storage industry's first high-level mastermind group, where elite investors come together to collaborate, scale, and dominate. But Scott's mission goes beyond business. Each year, he and his team travel to Mexico to fund and build homes for families in need, over 40 homes and counting, proving that profit and purpose go hand in hand. Get ready to hear from a man who's built an empire in storage and a legacy in service. Welcome to the show, Scott Meyers.
Emilio, so good to be here.
Great. Good to have you, Scott. I've heard about self-storage investing years ago through a gentleman named Mitch Stephen. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mitch and I are friends. Yep.
Really? Yeah. So he came on the show as well. We interviewed him.
Yep.
And he does a lot of like seller financing, but he told me he's like,
that's his niche.
Yeah. So he told me about this, and ever since then I've been really intrigued by it. So I was looking up the leaders in this space, and you popped up, and I'm so glad to have you here because you built a portfolio of over 28,000 units. I want to ask you, what was the biggest turning point that took you from being an operator to an empire builder?
You know, we moved from, initially when we got into storage, the idea was we wanted to build a real estate business that allowed us to have the lifestyle that so many people want. We want to be able, my wife and I, be able to raise our kids and do what we want, when we want, whenever we want, with whom we wanted. But the tenant toilet business didn't really allow for that to happen. I mean, you got to get a critical mass and get a property management companies in place, and your good lieutenants underneath you. But even though we got to that place, there's just so many moving parts to that side of the business. It wasn't really until we got into self-storage and began building that side of the business where we recognized that after we sold our last apartment complex, my wife said, "Hey, do you notice anything different today?" And of course, Emilio, that's always a loaded question when your wife asks you that. Is that I don't know, a new dress? Did you get your hair done?
New hair?
Yeah. And she goes, "No, it's quiet. Do you notice how quiet it is?" And I was like, "Yeah, it really is." And that allowed us to once again go back to working on the business rather than in the business and growing it and scaling it. But then when you start from scratch, you get to that place where you're 5-6 facilities into it, And like any business, now all of a sudden you can't do it all. And now there's a separate layer. We have to have district managers, and we have to have regional managers that oversee the site managers.
Yeah.
And then now we do have to have somebody coming on. Either, many of our businesses, we started with a fractional CFO, and then we hired a CFO. Somebody has to handle that. And so what's at that place when I would say when you have, those core five members of your team in place that are handling all of those pieces without you being involved in it, or your business partner or your wife, then that's when you truly get to the place where you can scale. The visionary can be the visionary, and I can do what I do best, which is matching deals up with properties. And that's when I'm spending 80% of my time there. That's where the magic happens.
Such an interesting take. So to get the core five, how many units did you have to hit in order to accomplish that?
Yeah, it's always a function. It's not necessarily a function of the facilities. It's really a function of the revenue, that's coming in, the dollars. How much when does everybody below scream uncle and saying I can't do this job anymore? And do the dollars support a full-time person or a part-time person? So it's always just managing that. It's just it's a math equation essentially. For us, for the type of facilities that we're buying and the size, we're about 400 units per facility on average. When you get truly again, probably to the rule of five applies. When you get about 5 facilities, 6 facilities into it, that's when you're building out a team of folks where you just can't, you're going to be pulled in too many directions, and you may have assistants or some folks that are handling, wearing 2 hats. But once you get to 5 or 6 of those sizable facilities, that's when you're beginning to build, the core, the 5 business leaders underneath you.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. You said a little bit about why you wanted to go this route. You wanted more of a passive type of income, more family time. I love that you travel and help out in Mexico. That's amazing. But, what is it about this asset class that so many investors overlook and you saw immense potential in?
Yeah, I've been at this for a long time. I mean, we started, as you mentioned, our education company, many years ago, like 18 years ago. And that was like 2 years after we started investing in it. And to be honest with you, it was the same thing that I tripped over. It was the same thing that I think many other investors, looked past as well in the beginning, is that, storage ain't sexy. I mean, they're metal boxes on concrete slabs.
Yeah.
So we were buying office buildings, and we were in multifamily, and, it's just prettier buildings, and it's I guess more to talk about with individuals to say, well, that's my office building over there, and that's our industrial and cold storage building over there on our flex space, and here's our multifamily. That just seems to be not only a natural progression. When people get into real estate, it's typically through single family houses, and now instead of buying 1 at a time or 5 this week or 10 this month, I'm going to buy several hundred units in one fell swoop. And I think people get enticed by that. It does allow you to scale a little bit more. But with storage, you can do the exact same thing, and you can buy a whole heck of a lot more units with $1 million or $5 million than you can with multifamily, and with a fraction of the headaches. And so that's, once we get to that place and that realization and begin to look into the business and under the hood and the metrics of it over the past 25 years, you realize that this is the most profitable asset class. And so no longer do I have a need to show off or brag about my multifamily buildings or my office buildings. Cash flow is sexier than any building, because you don't know what the cash flow looks like on it. So that's when the switch was flipped.
Good points. Now, if you are selling a rental property, like a multifamily property, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. I feel like you would. Can you do a 1031 exchange? Can you use a 1031 exchange to purchase this type of rentals?
Absolutely.
You can.
We do it ourselves, and we work that way with some investors. Mostly the projects that we are involved in, most of them are syndicated. And so in that case, we typically can't take on an investor that has 1031 exchange funds, because then the whole group would have to go forward afterwards, and that's not possible. So it's a little more difficult. We can do it with a TIC, tenants in common, and some other means. But to answer your question, you can do it with self-storage, Emilio. It's just more difficult to do it if you're doing bigger projects or multiple, to bring in a 1031 investor alongside of our other limited partners.
Because I know they want it to be a like transaction of equal or higher value.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So you could go from like multifamily into
absolutely
storage. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's really amazing.
Commercial real estate. I mean, it looks a little different because you get an operating business on top of the real estate, but it's still a real estate play.
Wow. Okay. That's beautiful to know. I love this. And so I noticed, on your website, right? You have a fantastic website, by the way, easy to navigate. And I would definitely suggest anybody to check out selfstorageinvesting.com. Was there another website? I think you have 2. What was the other one?
Yeah, so passivestorageinvesting.com. And so that's for our passive investors who want to come alongside and partner with us on our projects in a
Perfect.
syndicated fashion.
That, Scott, on one of those websites, you have a beautiful picture of looked to be it looked to be an old maybe strip mall, and it looked like it was
Hmm.
developed into self storage. So you have these
Yeah,
big old retail stores that are
yeah,
probably slowly going away because
correct.
the cost, the
Hmm.
overhead. Can we talk a little bit about that? Like, what can you tell us about that? Is that
Yeah.
true? Do you see that as a trend?
There's different asset classes, retail strip centers being one of them. Where if we can go into one of those buildings, one of those assets, and perform what we call an adaptive reuse of it. If we can take down the anchor, say it's like an Aldi or maybe a department store that has gone defunct, and then utilize the rest of the strip.
Mm,
In many cases, we'll fit out the entire strip mall, anchor and all, and turn it into self storage. In other instances, if it's a huge anchor and we would be putting too much self storage into that market in a 5 mile trade area with the fitting out the entire structure, then we'll just fit out the Class A anchor, and then the rest of it will operate as retail or sell it off or turn it into something else. And so everything's done by a feasibility study and just understanding what is the highest and best use with all of this space. And what we're finding with most strip malls, that the highest and best use is not retail. Retail's struggling as it has been with the onset, obviously the economy right now, but then it's been under attack for years with Amazon, and being able to virtually buy anything and everything we want and have it arrive on our doorstep within a day or so, and
hmm
pretty soon within the same day. If we can buy those properties on the cheap for pennies on the dollar because they've gone under and defunct, they're very well situated, very well located in the path, travel patterns, in the path of travel for other folks on the way back and forth to the residential areas, or right in the middle of them. So those are very keen targets for us.
Let's talk about the cost to transition a property.
Yeah,
Let's say a retail outlet. Like, what is the cost per square foot? And I know this is going to change, obviously,
of
with
course.
vendors
Hmm.
and materials and location. But can you give us a typical cost?
We're in for just the conversion, meaning the walls and doors inside. We're in $25 to $35 a square foot, depending upon the fit and finish and the market. It may be 45 to 55 in some markets, but we're generally 25 to 35 for doing the actual conversion or the fit out. Now, again, that doesn't, Amelia, that doesn't take into consideration the shell. Do we have to put a new roof on it? Well, obviously now that's going to change things. How much HVAC work can we usually anticipate most of it is going to be replaced, if not all of it. But if there's some good units, it depends on that. What are we going to do with the parking lot? Do we have to handle that? The rest of the facade, or do we have to completely change it, or do we just need to paint it, and change the doors? The answer to any of your questions, Emilio, is it always depends. But in that instance, obviously, it's a big depends.
That's the fun of it, though. And that's why I love
Yeah, it is.
anything to do with real estate. It's always a challenge, it's always a bigger problem to solve. Now, as far as the people that are coming in and renting from you, it sounds like it might be a mix, but I'm curious, do you have a percentage wise of how many are like commercial users, like, warehousing stuff for their
Hmm.
eBay or
Yeah.
Amazon store? And how many
Hmm.
are your typical like renters or homeowners that just have too
Yeah.
much stuff and they want it stored
Yeah.
away?
Depending on the market, we're usually around 25 to 35% are the we call it the B. If you want to call it B2B, it's the commercial clients that are coming in there, and they stay quite a bit longer. They'll sign longer term contracts. We'll give them a discount, and those are our favorites because we just don't have the turnover with them. Depending upon the market where it's located, 25 to 35%. We are seeing an uptick and more of an interest, as again Amazon and eBay and the other drop shippers. There's this battle over the last mile right now, and literally it's just the last mile. Who can have those warehouses in the neighborhoods within the last mile, so that they can have something. You order something in the morning and it's delivered by the afternoon or late that evening. And so our facilities, those that we are converting, doing the conversions on adaptive reuse or development, we're adding in on the first floor a number of larger units that are meant specifically for those clients versus the retail, the individual that is renting it for their household goods, which is a 10 by 15, 10 by 10, 10 by 20. The others, the commercial, are anywhere from 400 square foot on up to 1,500 square foot to accommodate these drop shippers going the last mile.
It's amazing. If you're just tuning in right now, we're interviewing Scott Meyers of Self Storage Investing, and he has a fantastic podcast. You're going to want to check it out, and a couple different websites. One of them is selfstorageinvesting.com, and we're talking about how he is turning specifically right now old retail outlets into self-storage, but there's a number of other types of facilities that we can turn into self-storage for real estate that you don't have to worry about, free from tenants, toilets, and trash. I love that. And if you're investing in real estate right now, and it is it's a burden, right, dealing with tenants sometimes, and you might want to take a different route. Well, Scott mentors and can teach you exactly how to do this. He's helped thousands of people all across the country. So we wanted to have him on today because I think this is quite fascinating. What is the most ideal, or the top three, let me ask you this, the top three most ideal conversions, like type of properties to convert into self-storage?
Well, in real estate, it's always location, 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 and that's not my three. That's just one of them, and that is, the beauty of these conversion projects is that we can come into a town, a city, a municipality, and there's a need for storage, but they won't allow it because zoning won't allow it, in certain areas and with certain buildings. But with these conversion projects, if the zoning is already in place and storage falls underneath that, then we can buy it, and then all we have to do is they just approve our plans afterwards. And so that is probably the biggest one because, like anything, I mean, the biggest expense that we have in our business right now is really time. If things go slow, that's our biggest. We always, we get a budget to do a development or whatever else. We're gonna beat up the vendors. We're going to beat up the suppliers as much as possible, but that pales in comparison to having a month delay or 2 month delay. Anything that we negotiate on the front end is eaten up in losses by delays. And so it takes, from a development front to back, ground up, you're starting with a piece of dirt. Well, sometimes it takes you up a year just to get the approval from the city, from the municipality. Well, if you've already got a building and a shell in place, that's already done. We're not changing that. And so now all we're doing is just getting a permit to be able to fit out the inside. And so, we've lopped off 8 months to 14 months. And so that's probably the first. The second is, by nature of these conversions, if we're buying a shell for pennies on the dollar, well, a portion of the project is already purchased for pennies on the dollar rather than paying top dollar and, new construction costs for the shell. The inside's always the same. The walls and doors. But if we're starting with a shell that hopefully doesn't need a whole lot, but still, even if it does need a new roof and we have to do the front, it's still considerably less expensive than building it out from the front end. And then third is usually the location itself. Not just because of the zoning and being able to get it in quicker, but there's also a barrier to entry to other competitors. So typically there's a need for storage, a higher demand, which means a higher velocity of lease up in those locations. So I mean, the list goes on, but that is our business model, and that is our favorite way of approaching and attacking the business right now.
Great info. Thank you, Scott. So how close should you be or should you not be to another storage facility like McDonald's, Burger King, right across the street from one another? Like, how does that work in your industry?
Well, in order to answer that, it's important to know how the business operates, really. And the battle, first of all, is won here. It's won on the phone. It's a commodity. People are looking for school systems and neighborhoods. This is a task. Mom needs to get dad's stuff out of the garage or out of the basement to make room for whatever it is that she has, or just to get, because she started looking at his stuff. So she's going to look nearby. Where can I drop this stuff off and rent it very easily? And what I can see on my phone or on my iPad or on my laptop is that this is a clean, safe, secure facility. So that's it. When at first blush, if it's something close by, the website looks appealing, and you have the ability to be able to either reserve a unit or rent a unit online, and she gets to check that off her list, that's who wins. And so knowing the nature of how people then look dictates, really where we're looking to develop or purchase. Because if there's a small amount of storage in a 5-mile trade area, we find that, for the most part, people aren't going to travel more than 4 to 5 miles to their stuff. And that's in the primary and secondary markets. If you're in downtown, Manhattan, nobody's going to travel more than a mile.
Yeah.
But, you get the idea. Most of America, 3 miles is 5 miles is all they're going to, travel to. So if you draw a ring around a 3 to 5 mile trade area, If there is, we use a number of roughly 7.5 to 8.5 square foot per person of self-storage in that market. If you're there, you're at equilibrium. If there's 10 square feet per capita in a 5-mile radius of the site that you're looking at, that's probably oversupplied. If you're at 3 or 4 square foot per capita, probably undersupplied. An opportunity to come in because rents are usually higher, and you probably have the ability to raise rents and lease up the facility a little quicker. So long-winded answer to your question, but it's we look more based upon the supply and demand because, again, it is a commodity. There's nothing we can do to drive demand for self-storage because the demand is only there when people need it.
That was interesting. Let's talk about that per capita stat that you shared again. And can you break that down a little bit more and explain it? Because I
so
think
roughly,
I got it, but
7, let's just call it 8 square feet of self-storage per capita is what we found is kind of like the sweet spot for storage in this country right now, in just about any market. And really that just points to the consumer behavior in the United States right now, in almost any market. Of course, it's going to vary a little bit by demographics, but that's, that is a round number. And so again, when you get up to that place where you've got 10, 11, 12 square foot per person in a market, in a 5-mile trade area, it's probably going to be oversupplied. And again, there's anomalies to that. Florida, there's no basements, and 0 lot line neighborhoods, there's going to be more demand. And so those 9 and 10 square feet per capita in that market, if we draw a ring around it, and then we realize when we visit the sites that the competing facilities, they're full and they get a waiting list. Well, because there's just higher demand. So there's a demand factor that goes on top of that as well. But, when we're doing our first blush and, our benchmarking for a particular site or a market, those are the numbers that we're using to determine, whether it's we're already stepping into a market that may be oversupplied.
Fantastic. Now, how about let's go back to conversion for a second, because we have a lot of developers that listen to this show, a lot of people that are interested in investing. Couple questions there. Would you suggest for somebody to lease a long-term triple net lease a building or to purchase a building? Which model is more profitable?
I mean, your exit is always easier. I mean, our business model right now, Emilio, is to scale and then exit. So that is to buy and or develop a number of facilities and then to be able to sell those off to the bigger player, national player, regional player, a REIT, a hedge fund, and they all want to own the asset. I mean, just like you and I, so it's much more beneficial, higher multiple, on the back end when we sell it if we own the building versus a lease.
Now, when you are purchasing this real estate, converting it over to storage and selling it, what is the rate of return that you're seeing on average?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I would love to know. I would love to know.
Well, that also depends as well. So for our limited partners, we're in that. If it's a development project, where again, it's a math equation. So we need to be able to produce returns, which means that we need to give a larger equity portion to our limited partners to make it enticing enough for them to be able to participate in these development projects. And so that's a 20 to 25% IRR in today's market at today's interest rates. And our internal rate of return for us on the GP side is usually 10 to 15 points above that, sometimes more. It just depends. So we're always looking at the market and how to be competitive because meaning we know that these our limited partners, our syndicated equity partners that come inside of these projects, we're competing against, other projects, other developers, or other asset classes, multifamily or storage or elsewhere. So our goal is to, not only our track record and performance, which speaks for itself, but if we can offer a point or two higher in terms of an internal rate of return, then again, it's all about speed and being able to raise the capital faster and get these projects done. So that's, roughly that's what we're looking at for these development projects. If it's an existing facility, a turnaround project, usually in the 18, 19, 20% for our limited partners. And we're, again, about 10 to 15 points higher than that, above that, sometimes more.
Now, what's the minimum investment that somebody would need to make?
Yeah, 50,000 is typically the minimum for our projects. We do have some 506Bs, which are projects in which non-accredited investors can invest, and for that, typically our minimum investment is a little bit lower. It's at 25,000. Well, not a little bit, half as much.
So, if somebody is listening to this right now, and we briefly talked about it, but I got to ask you again, and they are using a 1031 exchange, they're selling a rental property. Could they use that 1031 exchange for any current projects that you have right now?
Nothing that's available right now, but check back with me in 2 weeks.
I will. That person with the 1031 exchange might be me. It just might be me.
Yeah,
All right. That's good to know. Now, what about,
we will hook a dude up.
that's amazing. So good to meet you, Scott. Now, what about the turnover, right? So I don't know the correct
Yeah,
term for this, but from
yeah,
start to finish when you're investing, okay, how long does it take to get your return on investment? Is it years, months,
yeah. Yeah,
decades?
usually years. Our development projects, most of those are 4 to 5 year projects
Okay.
for us to be able to get the thing built out and then optimized. Filled up 85 to 90% occupancy or higher, and rates at the top of the market with all the concessions burned off. That's about 4 to 5 years. And our turnaround projects, I mean, some of them are as low as 2 years. Some of them have been less than that, but I would say the average or the median is anywhere from 2 to 3 years on those projects.
So let's just say if you put $1 in, okay, I think you said about
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
times,
5%.
right? Okay.
Hmm.
So, all right. So if you put $1 in, you're getting $25 out, right? Is that
Yeah.
basically, all right. So
Yeah.
5 years later, so that's about a 5% return on your money each year. This is probably something really good for people that are sitting on a bunch of cash. Maybe they sold a bunch of real estate. Maybe they are in the later years in their life and they're looking
Hmm.
for a really safe investment. Would you say that that's
Hmm. Yeah,
particularly
that's
who?
the idea. There's obviously no guarantees as a syndicator.
Of
We're
course.
bound by the SEC, but that's why that's why it's so popular right now. We
Mm.
do have an awful lot of folks that are migrating not only towards real estate but self storage because they're tired of what goes on at Wall Street. It's the big casino
Oh yeah.
there in New York, and then bounces around like a pinball machine, and you never know what you're going to get. And so a lot of those folks are tired of riding that wave, literally of that wave where self storage is up and to the right. They can see it, touch it, feel it. It's an asset. They're investing in hard assets, and that's what people are running in droves to at this time is into hard assets. And then when you compare the hard assets and the returns, well, self storage is above everything right now. It's just as an asset class, it's returning more than multifamily, more than hospitality, more than anything else. And I say that not because I'm biased, because you know what, I didn't become biased to self storage until I got in it. I was in everything else, and then I saw that this was more profitable. That's why I came over here, and that's what other folks are seeing as well.
While we're talking about demographics, like what demographic right now is investing the absolute most in self-storage?
Funds. I mean, the smartest folks, the hedge funds that are either being created or those that have been around for a while that are looking to either balance their portfolio or we've got a lot of new funds that are coming into the market space, and they've just the same as the smaller investors. They said, I've had it. I've had it with single family. I've had it with multifamily. I've had it with Wall Street. And they can see that self-storage, once again, is up and to the right, greater returns than all other asset classes. And so we got a flood of people coming in because all of a sudden it's sexy.
Nice. I love it. Now, are there any like key metrics that you use to figure out if something is a deal breaker, or any data points before pulling a trigger on a new facility acquisition?
We rely really heavily on the zoning boards to determine if there's any new competition coming in, because if they're approving anything next
Yeah.
door to us or down the road, and I'm not so sure if I even answered that question, Emilio, when you talked about Starbucks or Burger King and McDonald's
Yeah.
next to each other. I started to answer that. When we look at that 5 mile radius and 8 square foot per capita,
Yes.
it doesn't matter if it's underserved. I'll park myself next to a neighbor. I'll develop right next door, because we're serving the same market and there's room for both of us. But then that also is a double-edged sword. If there's some folks coming in and the city is granted zoning, and you got some cowboys coming in that feel that they can do nothing but make it rain in a market that's already sitting at 9 square foot per capita, we're keeping an eye on that. So we always want to see if there's another developer coming in, and then conversely, any new projects announced with regards to multi-resi coming into a market that's going to boost the demand for it, because we know that 8 square foot per capita is not only equilibrium, but you can drop me into any market and you're going to find that where there's people living 8 square feet per person, if you will, all of those people, they're going to need 8 square foot of self storage per person in that market, and so we back into that number as well.
Smart, very smart. So you created the industry's first high-level mastermind of the
hmm
sort, right? What are the common traits and habits that you see in the most successful members?
First of all, it's the price of admission to our mastermind, which is it's an interview process. It's exclusive. There's a couple other self storage masterminds out there where you can write a check and you're in. For us, it's you got to give back, a go giver mentality, because any true good mastermind, in my opinion, we follow the model from Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. When you got people that are growing and scaling together, and they're all contributing, that's what makes a true mastermind. And
True.
so we have an interview, and we can flesh out the people if they're just there to take, and they're not looking to give back to the community so that everybody gets better. I mean, there's a saying that I didn't coin it. I just heard it out there that is, the fire burns hotter when the coals are closer together. And when everybody is, giving and contributing,
Of that.
that's when the mastermind, succeeds. I mean, I'm just a ringmaster. The rock stars in the room are the ones that are presenting, and they're bringing their A game. And we've told them, hey, listen, I know the average roughly of what these people are making in the room because they've shared it. And so we put a dollar, figure to that and just say, hey, this hour on this stage is pretty coveted space. And by the way, from all the people in this room, their hourly rate added up is this. So you better bring that much value in your presentation, because that is what is at stake, because they could all be out doing, including myself, something else. And so we stick to that. This is not just a group. It's not an event that somebody just slapped a name on as a mastermind. We are following Napoleon Hill's model, and we take it very seriously. And so, as a result of that, we got partnerships, we got equity being raised, we got deal flow coming in. I mean, that's the mantra of our mastermind: is community, capital, and deal flow.
Hmm.
It's a community of only self-storage investors bringing capital and deal flow, and then we just match it up. It's the largest underground network of deal matchmaking in the country, and we do more deals than the largest brokerage firm in the country, but nobody knows about it because we don't tell anybody about it.
Well, now they do. And if they're listening to the Wealth
Well, yeah, we
Architect,
just don't share the numbers. I mean, they know about the mastermind, but we just don't share our numbers. But we do more deals than anybody.
how many members do you have in total in your mastermind?
It ebbs and flows between 80 and 100, and we've got 60 to 80 that show up at each quarterly event, and then others got busy lives, or they're off jetting off to islands or doing stuff with their kids and what have you. But we've got a good core group that comes in every time, and they're like family. They've been around for 10, 12, 13 years. They're sharing each other's passwords to their lock boxes in case they die for their estates. And
Wow.
there's just a level of camaraderie and a family-like atmosphere that is nothing I could have imagined when we launched it.
Two other quick questions, because we are almost out of time. I could talk with you for another hour. Obviously, giving back is so important. And I noticed that, the best people I meet are always giving back. They don't give back to earn. They don't give back to get more, but it's just like
Yeah.
the law of the universe, right? The more you
Yeah,
give,
it is.
the
Mhm.
more you get. It's just weird how that happens. So you bring your
Mhm.
clients, your staff, and your family to Mexico to build homes for the
Yeah.
needy. Why is
Mhm.
integrating philanthropy into your business model so important, Scott? And how has it
Mhm.
shaped your leadership?
Good question, and we could talk 2 more hours about this.
I'm
It
sure.
was never intentional for the benefit of the gain, like you mentioned, of anything else. It was just in the beginning. It was just our DNA. My
Yeah,
wife and I are both Christians, and we've always believed in tithing. Period.
I
10%
love that.
of everything off the top we give back to God, and you can't outgive Him, just like
Amen.
you mentioned. I mean, that's you just can't. And so we just out of obedience, we decided to start tithing corporately and taking 10% of our profits and putting into to go back, we have to give credit where credit is due. We were taken on a short-term family-friendly mission trip by a friend of mine in business, and he did the exact same thing that we do. And we went on one of these trips. He paid for it for our family to go, for us to experience a short-term family-friendly mission trip to Mexico. Or
Hmm.
we went to the Dominican Republic and built a house with Homes of Hope. And we were wrecked. Our lives were changed, and we came back. And I told my wife, I said, I want to do this. We're going to follow that model, and we're going to do it. And we're going to begin tithing corporately, and God's going to bless it, and we're going to make this happen. And he and we did just that, and our business took off. That was not the goal. That was not the intention. But it's amazing to see what happens. And once we did commit to that, our business took off. And so I went
Yeah.
from one house to then 2 houses, now 2 trips per year, and 4 houses per trip is what we're doing now. But the beauty of it truly is just the folks that we've taken along now. The ripple effect has taken place, and so those folks that have come with us, they did the same thing that I did. They saw it, they caught it, they got it, and now they're doing the same thing with their teams and taking other people. And so,
God bless you.
yeah, all just changing, the trajectory of these family trees, one house at a time, one family at a time.
That's amazing. The more and more people I interview, and the more and more successful people I interview, we have that one common trait, is that so many of us are Christians and so many of us give back.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you tithe. I believe in that. I think it's amazing. You're helping so many people. If you lost everything tomorrow, Scott, but kept your knowledge and network, what's your 90-day playbook to rebuild your real estate business from scratch? It's a tough question.
I don't know, just get the band back together and just keep playing. I mean, that's it. I mean, what we're doing right now, it doesn't take cash. If we lost everything, I mean, we're syndicating, we're partnering with projects anyway. So we match the deals up with the projects and the equity, and we know how to operate it. It's just putting the players back in place again if they're not already there. I mean, we know what to do.
I love that. And, Scott, if somebody wants to learn more about you, they want to log into log onto your website and connect with you, what's the best site for them?
Yeah, I mean, if you got any interest at all in self-storage, go to selfstorageinvesting.com. It is the greatest resource out there of free information to just learn. I mean, white papers, education materials, stats and data that we have. We're pretty open about most of that stuff. And then if you want to learn how to do it and grow it and scale it, then obviously we can help with that too.
Wow, what a fantastic guy, Scott Meyers of Self-Storage Investing. Scott, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm glad to have you in the network, and hang tight real quick. And we'll be right back here in a couple minutes on The Wealth Architect. We have another Scott coming on, and this Scott is going to teach us how to start a successful podcast. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here on The Wealth Architect. When you're buying real estate, you need somebody that understands the ins and outs of the legal ends. It's so important to have the right attorney working for you. You also need a bulldog. Let me tell you something. The first time I sat in a conference room with this lady, Melissa Delana of Delana Law, I immediately knew she owned the room. You need an attorney that owns the room, that can solve problems and make things happen when everybody else can't. You want to hire Delana Law in Massachusetts, Connecticut, or Rhode Island. Delana Law delivers every single time. They're going to help you out with all of your real estate needs. It's delanalaw.com. You got to check them out. Episode number 15, The Wealth Architect, segment number 2. I'm so excited because we have a gentleman that I met. Actually, I met him online. He's a great guy in a Facebook group for podcasters, right? And I think it's so fantastic how the internet can definitely bring people together and in so many good ways. So his name is Scott Rotondo. Scott has a radio program and a podcast that does very well, and it's called The Rotunda. Is that right?
It is. Yep. It's a play on my last name.
I love it.
Also the State House building in Rhode Island.
Perfect. I love that. So we asked Scott to come in today because I've listened to his podcast. He actually had me on his podcast, and he does such a wonderful job, and he's been doing it for years. So Scott, I'm glad to have you here because a lot of our listeners want to get their message out, and they really want to make sure that they're hitting the right audience and doing things the right way. So no one more perfect than you to come on and discuss this.
Right. Well, I'm really glad. First of all, thank you for the time, Emilio.
You're welcome.
Really
Thank
glad
you.
to be here. Honored to be in front of you guests. I think the first thing when you want to talk about building a podcast, I go back to what Zig Ziglar said, the consummate salesman, years and years ago. Advertise your business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you have something to say and you're getting out there, even if you're just starting with maybe Facebook Live or Instagram Live or something, put word out there ahead of time. One thing I do consistently every week when I'm doing a show, first thing in the morning is everybody's having their cereal and drinking their coffee. You see on Instagram, you see on X or Twitter or whatever it's being called now, and Facebook, hey, I've got the Rotunda coming with you tonight. Here's the guest I'm going to have. Here's what we're going to be talking about. In the first comment, here's the link. Click on it this time. I've been a stickler lately for adding the time zone.
Yeah.
I've found sometimes if I've had guests with different time zones, so I'll specify 8 p.m. EST, so someone's not tuning in at 11 and getting static. So that kind of helps. So find your platform, be it live, or if you're going to invest in awesome equipment like this, or
Thank you.
or where that may be. And then again, when you're going to say something, let people know you're coming so that people can tune in and kind of create that buzz.
So has Twitter been has that been the best platform to get your podcast out there so far?
It's been a little bit of each. It's kind of gone back and forth. For a long time, Twitter was where I got most of my residual clicks from for the podcast.
Mhm.
And then for a little while, Facebook kind of pulled ahead. But yeah, it is switching back to Twitter.
Yeah, I can see that. It's pretty targeted, and the audience there's really engaged.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I personally, I never really got into Twitter, but that is one area that I can definitely improve because I see so many people becoming so successful on there. Now, what else are you doing to build a steady following, an audience?
Well, not just on social media, but I also, I work with my guests many times, for instance, such as yourself, when they're on to maybe repost a podcast of the episode, because I'm live on Wednesday nights, and then for the rest of the week, it's podcast. It's really into perpetuity. It's up there as a podcast. And I ask the guest if they're willing. They don't have to. It's not a requirement to share it. Maybe do some hashtags with it. I also I let people know outside of social media. I'm on a couple of nonprofit boards and at work and through my friend group. Just let people know what I'm doing, and that kind of helps it grow outside of social media as well.
Well, let's talk about yours real quick. So the Rotunda, right? So what is the driving purpose behind your podcast exactly?
Well, really, it's a bit of a current events and variety show. So I want to get news out there and get the headlines up. And I try to challenge my viewers to look at things outside their normal, maybe left-leaning or right-leaning kind of vantage points. And just kind of look at things from all different angles. For the last couple of weeks, I've dealt with the Iran-Israel war, kind of looking at it from U.S. involvement, from the Iranian side, from Russia's side, and also dealing with national politics as well. Not just politics, but the current events, just so people can have maybe a more nuanced viewpoint other than just reading the headlines on, say, Yahoo News.
Yeah. Amazing. I think that's great, Scott. And it's so important nowadays to look at things from different angles because people are, so kind of in tune with just their own way of seeing things, and people are arguing and fighting, and it's like, let's come together and let's look at this from different lenses,
Amen to that.
How important, Scott, is consistency in your product? Because I see a lot of people, they'll start podcasts, right? And then they'll dabble, and then they'll walk away, and then they'll come back. So, how important is that consistency, and what does that do for your audience?
Well, it's absolutely crucial, Emilio. I'd say it's almost like a career. You want to have a career, be it accounting, be it marketing, be it real estate, what have you. You have to show up every day to do the work. If you're going to have a podcast and you say, I'm going to do this weekly podcast. Now, sure, we all take weeks off, maybe if you're feeling ill or if you're on vacation, or if work in the quote unquote real world has you overwhelmed at that point. But if you can really hit that 9 times out of 10, that weekly interval and keep it going for, if you say it's going to be for an hour, you have it for an hour. Not have one episode be maybe 2.5 hours, another one's 13 minutes. So people know, all right, this time, this week, I'm going to tune in and listen, and I know it's going to be for a half hour or it's going to be for an hour or what have you. That's important, as is kind of the quality. You don't want to have too many what I call fluff pieces, or once in a while, if I've had my 200th or 300th or 400th episode, it'll become almost like a clip show. I'll have a bunch of former guests, call in to say congratulations. But you want to have something that's engaging. So it's two things. It's having the time, consistent every week, and having the same kind of quality.
Got it. And how many shows have you done?
I'm on 465 right now.
That's amazing. So what is that, like 8 years?
It's been actually a little bit over 10 years. Yeah, there were some times I had to take some time off.
Oh, all right. Actually. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, man, it's so crazy. Can you tell us a story about maybe somebody you met or a door that was opened through your podcast that might have been life-changing or gave you a relationship that you would have never had?
Oh, sure. Yeah, one comes right to the top of my head. I was a few years into doing the podcast, and I would interview, my guests come from all walks of life. I've had actors and actresses in Hollywood, entrepreneurs like yourself. I've had politicians from all over the aisle come on the show. And in my local community, I was kind of getting known for that. And out of the blue, I got a cold call from one of the local papers. There was a very hotly contested mayoral election going on in my town. And the two guys, I mean, they couldn't agree on whether or not the sky is blue. So there was a lot of vitriol going back and forth. And they decided they were going to have a debate, a kind of a panel debate at City Hall. And they actually asked me if I would be kind enough to moderate.
Wow, that is cool. That is very cool.
I mean, you show up at City Hall, and I mean, you've got the local news stations there, local reporters. It was a bug out. It was really something I never would have pictured myself doing a few years before.
Wow.
Yeah, and it opened the doors. I've done other, moderated other debates since then too. But that was really, I would say, one of the things that opened up that never would have happened other than for the podcast.
Scott, that's impressive. Now, has your listenership skyrocketed since then? Has it gone up since then, you think?
It has, yeah, I think so. And a lot of it's local to my town and maybe to southern New England. But, I do have some hits from overseas sometimes, depending on, what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And those are the impressive ones because at 8 p.m. our time in the Netherlands or Belgium or France, where some of the hits come from, it's about 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I don't question why they're listening to me after midnight. I'll just take the clicks, and I'm kind of happy for it.
Spies, maybe they're spying on Pawtucket, Rhode Island, seeing what's happening. Yep. Now, have you monetized your podcast? Do you have sponsors in place, or?
I do, yeah. They help me to pay for the airtime. Usually it's a local business that'll want to sponsor the show for about a month or so, and then I kind of rotate them in and out.
Yeah. And now, is it hard? Let's talk about that, because there's a lot of people that, they'll have their podcasts, but they might struggle to pay for it, or they might be paying for it with their income from their day job or from some other hustle. What is the best way to find the sponsors for your show, and how do you approach somebody about that?
Well, you have to make it a value proposition, Emilio. You have to say to, Mr. XYZ business owner, well, okay, you're going to give me X amount of dollars, and in return, I'm going to give you, this amount of exposure. So you have to know, you have to really have a good pulse beat on your listenership. So I would need to know how many listeners I have on my typical live broadcasts and how many come for the residual hits for the podcast, as well as for the station as a whole. Because then I can say for, a few $100, you can sponsor the show for a few months, and you're going to be in front of, several thousand people for my podcasts, and also, well into the 5 figures for the stadium as a whole, the station as a whole.
Okay, got it. That's amazing. Now, the station that you're on is 990 WBOB. Now, that's an internet station, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was started in 2007, so it just turned 18 years old this month. It probably could legally vote if we could get it registered.
Do you own that station?
I do not. No, a good friend of mine actually owns the station and is kind of the GM and CEO. He was in the radio business for a while. And he was at an AM station that went defunct, and he kind of bought the equipment and kind of took it on himself to bring it to the internet.
Wow, that's amazing. And, internet radio is fantastic because it's far reaching. And that's why I love, so we're on iHeartRadio, right? So we're on a few radio stations, terrestrial radio, but also iHeart as well as SoundCloud and all of those others. Do you leverage Spotify, SoundCloud, any of those platforms?
I haven't done that yet. It's in the books for me, though, depending on, how much longer I do the show and, how much more, I want it to be in perpetuity.
Now, are you doing all of the administrative tasks for the show, the scheduling, the content, the back end, the posting, social media? Are you handling all that yourself?
I have a team that does the social media on the station end and the production. But as far as booking the guests and the content, that's me. I just really like to kind of have the ownership of the full thing. And I feel like if I produce the content myself, I've really been able to dig into it and kind of look at it from a couple of different kinds of angles.
Sure. Now, talking about preparing content for your show, right? How long do you take in preparation? Are you you spending hours preparing for something, or are you spending right before the show, or walk us through that? What's the prep?
Well, I like to take at least 2 or 3 hours beforehand, in the days leading up to the show. I'll look at what's going on in the world that week, and I'll pick out a couple of stories and kind of dig into them a little bit. If I have a guest that week, do some research on her or him, check out their website, see what they've been doing. Because, if they're taking the time, Emilio, away from their family or away from work to call me and chat with me for 15 minutes or so, I owe them
True.
the right to have, really beefy questions, not, what sign are you, or, again, the aforementioned, like the puff pieces. And then in the day or two before the show, I look at what's really going on, what's really kind of topical at that point, and I do the deeper dive, and I kind of sketch the show out just so I have a good idea of what I want to talk about. Occasionally, if something happens, that day, if there's breaking news, sure, we rip it up and we call an audible, and we can go with that.
Nice. Very good. You deal a lot with current events, right? So there's people that are so one-sided and just stuck on something and can't get past like their own 2 feet, and they can't see the other side of things. When you get this negative, like, you're a great guy. I mean, I get to know you a little bit over the past few times we spoke. How do you deal with the negative feedback, especially if it's coming in on a local level?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, just negative towards the, towards the podcast itself, or towards ideas that I've put out. I'm willing to engage and have a discussion, but that depends. It takes two to have that discussion.
Yeah.
If there's someone who just doesn't want to have the discussion, I tend to just kind of, let it go and not respond, because all you're really doing is kind of giving fuel to that fire. You do have some more nasty people. A few years ago, I had a really nasty person trying to, to come after me and spread rumors. But what helped me there is I had already such a body of work, and already such a well-known reputation, that when they started kind of, trying to sling mud on my name, it backfired on them immensely, and they wound up slinking, honestly, out of public life.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, so when you're dealing with that, when you're having to show up every week and really handle a ton of the elements of the podcast, from pre-production to production to after, like, how do you keep yourself motivated, Scott, to keep showing up every single week?
Well, I keep thinking back to some people that I've actually met some people at the train stop as I'm on my way into Boston, that have listened to the show and really gotten some, some good ideas out of it. And that's the sort of thing that keeps me motivated, because you're right. Sometimes in the winter, it's 20 degrees out, it's sleeting, it's hailing, you're slip sliding on the highway heading to the studio, and you're saying, gosh, do I really want to do this? But I just call back those moments, and I call back being at City Hall for that mayoral debate, for all those news people, and just the opportunities that it's opened up for me. And I say, this is what I've got to do right now. I just got to keep bringing the torch.
And what is your long-term goal with all this media, your message, and,
Well, really just helping people to find some sort of a common ground with current events. And it's not that everybody has to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but just to encourage people to use some critical thinking and look at subjects with that critical mind, whether you agree with the information or not. Another thing that I'm looking to do, and that we've done pretty successful lately, is bring up the issue of cancer research with 990 WBOB. We have kind of an appellate arm called Crush Cancer.
I saw that.
Yeah, we do fundraisers for cancer research. And in the last couple of years, we've raised over $25,000 that all goes straight to the Jimmy Fund and Dana-Farber, just to help early detection and treatment for this disease.
Wow. Are you open to other causes like the Caroline Caprio Brain Tumor Foundation?
We are, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. That's amazing. So cool. I'm heavily involved with them, and I think that's great. And what's funny, Scott, is the last gentleman that was on the show, his name was Scott as well, too.
Good man,
and
obviously.
he was also into philanthropy. So that's amazing. I'm so glad that you give back. I love that. And last thing I want to say is I got to give you a huge shout out, because you really stuck your neck out there. I was on Facebook when we were starting this about 15, 16 weeks ago, and I was looking for different people to have on the show, different experts in different fields, and also appear on other podcasts. And there were thousands of people on this group, right? Mm-hmm. And Scott came out of like nowhere. It was like, hey, you can come on my podcast. And I was like, wow, man, like totally amazing. And I'm so thankful for you. And I'm glad that we became friends. And I'm so glad that you came on the show too. And if people have questions for you, Scott, how are they going to reach you?
Sure. You can find me on social media. X, it's at Scott Rotondo. Instagram, the same thing. Scott Rotondo, on Facebook. I'm an accountant, so maybe not the most creative person. And I do have a personal email if none of the above work for you. And you guessed it, it's scottrotondo@yahoo.com.
That's awesome. And you could check out his show on 990wbob.com, the Rotunda and Rotunda. And you could check that out. So again, Scott Rotondo of the Rotunda radio show. Thanks so much for coming on, teaching us how to start a podcast. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Wealth Architect. We loved hearing your feedback. Feel free to send us any messages or questions for our guests as well. We can connect you. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you back here on the next Wealth Architect.